I was in the middle of wrapping a cashmere scarf for my mother when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a notification from the Mitchells group chat. I picked it up, expecting a logistical question about arrival times or a reminder to bring wine. Instead, I saw a message from my father, Richard. Sarah, the family has discussed this, and we all agree. It is best if you do not come to Christmas this year. Brittany needs the master suite for her in-laws, and we do not want to make them uncomfortable. Your presence would cramp the aesthetic and create unnecessary tension. We will catch up with you in the new year. I stared at the screen. My hands did not shake. My heart did not race. The room was perfectly silent, the kind of silence that happens right before a window shatters. I read the message again. Cramps the aesthetic. Before I could even process the cruelty of being evicted from my own family holiday via text, a second notification slid down from the top of the screen. A direct message from my father. Since you are not attending, please transfer $9,000 to the catering company immediately. They need the deposit by noon today to secure the private chef. Do not ruin this for your sister. I set the phone down on the table next to the half-wrapped gift. I did not cry. I did not scream. I picked up my mug of coffee, took a long, slow sip, and opened the admin app for the smart home system I had installed in their lake house 6 months ago. Before I show you exactly what happens when the temperature inside a luxury villa drops to 50 degrees in the middle of a black tie dinner, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been asked to pay for a party you were explicitly banned from attending? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to know I am not the only one. I did not throw my phone. I did not call my mother to ask why I was being erased from the family tradition I had funded for half a decade. I simply set my coffee mug down on a coaster and picked up my tablet. I am Sarah, 29 years old, and I fix broken systems for a living. Usually, that means debugging server farms for tech startups or optimizing logistics for shipping companies. Today, it meant fixing the glitch in my own family dynamic. I tapped the admin icon for the lake house. The dashboard loaded instantly. A sleek interface of blue and white that I had designed myself. Living room temperature, 72 degrees. Fireplace, active. Security system, disarmed. It looked cozy on the screen. It looked expensive. It looked like a home where a father would toast to his success while his daughter sat alone in an apartment 300 miles away. I navigated to the climate control settings. My finger hovered over the off button, but I stopped. I knew the law. If I turned the heat off completely in the middle of a Michigan winter, the pipes would burst, the water damage would be catastrophic, and Richard would have grounds to sue me for destruction of property. I was not going to give him that satisfaction. Instead, I selected a preset I had programmed for emergencies. Freeze protection mode. The target temperature on the screen slid down from 72 to 50 degrees. 50 degrees is perfectly safe for plumbing. It is also freezing for humans in evening wear. It is the temperature where breath starts to mist and fingers go numb around silverware. I confirmed the change and locked the thermostat with a new 20-digit encryption key. Next came the catering. $9,000. That was the price of the private chef, the servers, and the cases of vintage Bordeaux my father had insisted on. I opened my banking app. The card on file with the catering company was my personal platinum card, the one I used to accrue travel points I never had time to use. I clicked Manage Card. Then I selected Report Lost or Stolen. The app asked if I wanted to immediately cancel the current card and decline all pending transactions. I did not hesitate. I did not think about the chef, who was probably already prepping the hors d'oeuvres. I clicked Yes. Somewhere, in a commercial kitchen, a credit card terminal was about to decline a very large charge, and a chef was about to pack up his knives. I went back to the group chat one last time. New messages were rolling in. Brittany had posted a photo of the table setting gold chargers, crystal glasses, and the view of the frozen lake behind it. My mother had texted again. Did you send it? Dad is asking. I typed 3 words. Understood. Have fun. I hit send. Then I tapped the 3 dots in the corner and selected Leave Conversation. The chat vanished from my list, taking their demands and their photos with it. The silence that filled my apartment wasn't lonely. It felt heavy and charged, like the air right before a thunderstorm breaks. I walked to the window and watched the rain streak against the glass. They wanted a Christmas without me. They wanted the aesthetic without the person who paid for it. I checked the time. It was noon. The temperature inside the lake house would start dropping within the hour. By the time the guests arrived, they would be able to see their own breath. I poured the rest of my coffee down the sink and started packing a bag. I wasn't running away. I was just getting out of the blast radius. I sat at my kitchen island and opened my laptop. The screen glowed with the familiar grid of a spreadsheet I had titled Project Lake House. It wasn't a sentimental scrapbook of family memories. It was a ledger of survival. I scrolled to the top. November 2019. That was when Richard had called me, voice tight with panic, saying the bank was about to foreclose on their dream retirement property. He needed a bridge loan, he said, just until his investments matured. I covered the mortgage that month. $4,200. Then I covered December. Then January. I scrolled down, the rows blurring into a wall of numbers. For 48 months, I had paid the mortgage on a house my name wasn't even on. That was over $200,000. But the mortgage was just the baseline. My finger traced the column labeled Capital Improvements, Generac Backup Generator, $12,000. Commercial Grade Security System, $8,000. Smart Home Integrated Climate Control, $25,000. $45,000 in hardware alone. I had installed it all myself, spending weekends crawling through crawl spaces and wiring server racks while Brittany sat on the dock tanning and complaining that the Wi-Fi was spotty. I remembered the barbecue last July. Richard had stood on the deck, holding a scotch I had bought, telling his neighbors about his vision for the property. You have to be smart with your capital, he had said, gesturing to the solar panels I had paid for. It's all about leverage and foresight. I built this place to be a legacy. I had stood there, holding a tray of dirty dishes, and said nothing. I thought my silence was loyalty. I thought if I paid enough bills, if I fixed enough problems, eventually I would buy my way into being a daughter. I stopped scrolling. The cursor blinked at the bottom of the sheet, waiting for the next entry. The $9,000 for the catering. That was when the realization hit me. Cold and absolute. Richard didn't uninvite me because he hated me. Hate implies passion. Hate implies he sees me as a person capable of being an enemy. He uninvited me because you don't invite a utility to a dinner party. To Richard, I wasn't a child. I was a subscription service. I was the scapegoat's currency. In a narcissist's economy, the golden child Brittany gets paid in adoration just for existing. Her presence is the gift. The scapegoat pays rent for the privilege of breathing the same air. My money wasn't a contribution. It was the fee I paid to be tolerated. When he sent that text demanding the catering money immediately after banning me, he wasn't trying to be cruel. He was just confused. In his mind, the ATM doesn't need to eat the steak. The ATM just dispenses the cash so the real people can eat. I looked at the total at the bottom of the spreadsheet. It was enough to buy a small house in cash. It was enough to start a second company. It was enough to prove that I had loved them far more than they could ever afford. I didn't feel sad anymore. The grief evaporated, replaced by the cold, hard clarity of an auditor closing a bankrupt account. I closed the laptop. The fan whirred into silence. They wanted the legacy. They wanted the smart investment. Well, they were about to learn a very hard lesson about technical debt. Because when you stop paying the engineer who built the system stops working for you. By 7 p.m., the sun had set over Seattle, and my phone had become a window into a disaster happening 3 time zones away. I sat on my sofa with a glass of wine, a $20 bottle I had bought for myself, and opened Instagram. Brittany's story was a chronological documentation of the evening's collapse. The first post, timestamped at 5 p.m., was perfect. The lake house looked like a magazine spread. The fire was roaring. The tree was glittering with the Swarovski ornaments I had bought last year. And Brittany was posing in a strapless silver gown, holding a glass of champagne. Caption: hosting the in-laws. So blessed to carry on the family traditions. Number lake life. Number hostess with the mostess. I swiped left. The next post was from 6:30. The vibe had shifted. The guests were no longer mingling near the floor-to-ceiling windows I had paid to weatherproof. They were huddled near the fireplace. Brittany's mother-in-law was wearing a fur stole over her evening gown. Jared, Brittany's husband, was blowing into his cupped hands. I checked my smart home app. Interior temperature, 52 degrees. It was working. The house was slowly becoming a refrigerator. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from Richard. The heating app isn't working. It says, locked by admin. Fix it. Now. It's freezing in here, and Jared's parents are asking questions. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask if I was coming. He just assumed I was his remote IT support, available on demand to troubleshoot the comfort of the people who had excluded me. I didn't reply. I took a sip of wine and watched the temperature on my screen drop to 51. 10 minutes later, the phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the texts, a rapid-fire barrage of panic. Where is the chef? The catering van hasn't shown up. They aren't answering. Did you confirm the deposit? Sarah. Answer the phone. We have 20 people here and no food. I imagined the scene. The pristine dining table set with china. The empty chafing dishes. The awkward silence as stomachs started to rumble. I imagined Richard trying to bluster his way through it, pouring more wine to distract from the fact that the main course had been declined by Visa. I swiped back to Instagram. Brittany had posted a new update. It was a photo of several Domino's pizza boxes stacked on the kitchen island, right next to the crystal vase of white roses. The caption was no longer cheerful. It was vicious. When your jealous sister decides to ruin your big night because she can't handle not being the center of attention. Sad that some people are so toxic they'd rather starve their own family than see them happy. Drama Queen Pizza Christmas. I read it twice. Jealous. Toxic. They didn't see their actions, the exclusion, the demands, the exploitation as the problem. They saw my refusal to facilitate it as an attack. They weren't reflecting on why I wasn't there. They were just furious that the ATM had eaten their card. I zoomed in on the photo. In the background, I could see Richard. He wasn't eating pizza. He was pacing by the window, his phone pressed to his ear, his face red with a rage I knew intimately. He wasn't sorry. He was escalating. I set my phone down. The guilt I had been conditioned to feel for decades tried to flare up the urge to fix it, to unlock the heat, to order them food just to stop the conflict. But I crushed it. They were cold. They could put on coats. They were hungry. They had pizza. I was done keeping them warm. I stood up and walked to my desk. If Richard was pacing, that meant he was plotting. He wouldn't just take this lying down. He would come for me. And when he did, I needed to be ready, not with excuses, but with armor. I opened my email and started typing a message to the company lawyer. The drama was over. The war was just beginning. The next morning, my phone was strangely quiet. The frantic calls had stopped. The angry texts had ceased. This wasn't peace. It was the calm before a lawsuit. I sat in my home office. But I wasn't working on client code. I was on a video call with Marcus, the corporate attorney who handled intellectual property disputes for my tech firm. He wasn't a family lawyer, but he knew contracts, assets, and ownership better than anyone I knew. So, let me get this straight, Marcus said, leaning back in his leather chair on the screen. You didn't buy the equipment as a gift. You installed it as part of a beta test for your LLC? Correct, I said, sliding a digital folder into the chat window. 4 years ago, Richard, my father, couldn't qualify for the financing on the high-end smart home system he wanted. His credit was shot from a failed business venture in the 90s. So, I offered a solution. I opened the file on my screen titled Asset Allocation, Project Lake House. I purchased the entire infrastructure, the server racks, the commercial-grade router, the smart thermostats, the backup generator, and the security cameras through my company, Sierra Tech Solutions LLC. I treated the lake house as a remote testing site. The equipment is listed as depreciable assets on my company's tax returns. Marcus scrolled through the documents, his eyebrows raising slightly. And did your father sign anything? Yes, I said. He signed a standard site host agreement. It grants my company the right to install, maintain, and remove the equipment at any time. It explicitly states that the hardware remains the property of the LLC, not the homeowner. I remembered the day I had him sign it. Richard hadn't even read it. He was too busy bragging to the installation crew about his new system to pay attention to the paperwork his daughter was handing him. He saw it as a formality. I saw it as insurance. This is ironclad, Marcus said, grinning. This isn't a family fight. It's a commercial dispute. If he blocks access, he's holding stolen corporate assets. Exactly, I replied. Banning me from the house terminates the site host agreement. So, what now? I'm not waiting to be sued for freezing his house. I'm repossessing what I own. I hired a removal crew. We leave for Michigan tomorrow. Marcus nodded. I'll draft a notice of asset recovery. Take security. After the call, I printed everything, my UCC-1 filing, the signed host agreement, and a full inventory list. Not just paper. Protection. Richard had always expected me to fold. He forgot I was a CEO. The next morning, the crew rolled in. I opened the garage with my access code and told them to begin. Richard burst outside screaming threats while my brother-in-law live-streamed, calling me a psycho. Police arrived and Richard waived the deed, claiming I was stealing fixtures. Ma'am, your name isn't on the deed. Stop, the officer ordered. Richard smirked, triumphant until I handed over my binder. This equipment is owned by my company, I said. Here's the UCC-1. Here's the contract. He revoked access, which triggered repossession. The officer checked Richard's signature and stepped aside. Civil matter. Proceed. Take the generator too, I told the crew. That broke Richard. He lunged, screaming that I was nothing without him. Officers tackled and cuffed him in front of the neighbors while Jared's stream cut out. We stripped the house to the studs. Without the systems I'd paid for, the place froze solid. Richard was released on bail and ended up sleeping on a blow-up mattress at my sister's, the same woman who kicked me out of Christmas to impress her in-laws. Richard's legacy collapsed overnight. Neighbors saw not a patriarch, but a handcuffed man howling in the snow. Back home in Seattle, I blocked every family number. The debt was paid. The account closed. I poured a glass of Bordeaux, the same vintage Richard demanded for his party, and looked out at the skyline. Losing them wasn't loss. It was freedom. For years, I thought love required obedience. Now I know better. Love is free. Control is expensive. And I finally stopped paying.